So, yes, today, this is episode 4 for my YouTube channel. I'm going to be talking about storage. So, I'm going to talk about a couple of the different types of storage that are in use today, various different storage options regarding cloud, NAS drives, etc. And I'm going to touch on server storage as well, which does seem to be a bit of a dying part to the IT industry these days because of the cloud, but we will get into that shortly. So, storage hardware. Generally, um, today we've got two types of main storage, which are solid state drives, otherwise known as SSDs, and hard disk drives or HDDs. Now, um, there's some sort of key differences between the two of them. They are uh, quite common these days compared to some of the older magnetic tapes that we used to use and floppy drives and things like that. So I'm going to try and keep the history to an absolute minimum and concentrate on the here and now. So a solid state drive is exactly that. They're solid state, they've got no moving parts, they're quite fast, quite reliable, and they can take a beating. I believe most drives, solid state drives, can take something like 900 G-force before they start to fail or break. For reference, humans can survive about 15 to 20, I think, before we end up, yeah, not surviving. So they are the newer technology, so they are a bit more expensive than a what I would call a traditional hard drive, but they are much better. The cost of them is coming down considerably. So it wouldn't surprise me if it won't be long before you can't buy hard drives anymore. The hard disk drives, which are the older technology, they are slow. They can't take as much of a beating. I think they can only support about 145 G-force, which I know sounds a lot, but when they're spinning at 7,200 RPM, it's very easy to put that amount of G-force pressure on the end of that platter. Um, and they work a bit like a record player is probably the easiest analogy to use. So they've basically got platters in them or discs like a record player, and there's tracks on there. And as they spin, there's a little reader that comes out over the top of it to pick up the segments to understand whether it's one or zero, on or off, etc. So they've been around for a very long time. They're quite cost effective now, but they're not particularly fast compared to an SSD. So moving on into server storage. So servers, many years ago, most businesses would have a server sat on their premises, which gives them a central control point. They these days can be quite expensive for what you want them to do, and there are several points of failure because yes, they can have a hard drive in that's storing data, and that can be an SSD to make things faster and things like that. But it's working across your local network. You've then got the endpoints that are connecting into it. There's a lot of sort of issues with them and how they can fall over. They're also restrictive to the hardware because you maintain that server box. It's your responsibility to make sure it's up to date, etc. So you continually have to make adjustments to it, to replace them, upgrade them, etc. And that's why they can work out quite expensive these days. They are nice and secure though, because they generally work across your local network. So as long as they're not connected to the internet and you've got all the or you've got certain ports closed on them, then you should be relatively secure. Um, when the button wants to work. They are more than just a storage option because you can use Active Directory and things like that. So all your users can sign on from any machine and they always access their own desktop from any box, which is great. They can do authentications. You can get on-premises mail servers, exchange servers, and things like that. But these days, nobody really uses them. They migrate everything up into the cloud. It's a much more reliable system. It's accessible anywhere in the world. So it is starting to become old technology now. So moving on to NAS drives. Now, a NAS drive is network attached storage. So this is basically a giant hard drive that sits on your network, which enables you to store as much or as little as you like. So they can be more secure than the cloud because once, like servers, they sit on your network, so you've got sort of complete control over them. They don't have to be connected to the internet if you don't want them to be. They just have to be connected to your LAN, which means for somebody to access it, they've got to physically plug into your network. You can set up various authentication systems as well and two-factor authentication to try and make it more difficult for somebody to hack in and access your data. So they can be connected to the internet if you want them to be, at which point they're basically a private cloud system. So you can access them anywhere in the world. They are expandable. Just by buying hard drives, you can just increase the amount of storage space you've got. They do support RAID. A lot of them support RAID backups. So there's various different RAID 0 to 5, depending on how you want that backup to work, but also depends on the amount of storage space you'll end up with at the end. I'm more than happy to have a bit more of an in-depth chat about backup solutions for people if they would like. So, but yep, they're completely self-owned and controlled. So it's entirely down to you and your business. I think they're fantastic things to use. I've got one sitting in my office over the other side. And it's brilliant for all my PCs and my laptops. They all back up to that every week. I then have long-term file storage on there. They're not particularly fast, but they can be incredibly reliable, particularly if you use something like Western Digital Red hard drives, because they can actually communicate with each other. So when they're spinning, they're not actually vibrating each other in a way that's going to shorten their lifespan. There's a lot of sort of clever technology in them. So, and that's basically a photo of a Western Digital NAS drive. You can get them that are single disc. You could get them up to 16 discs if you want. You know, you can get massive, massive NAS drives. So, cloud storage. So it is incredibly accessible. Basically, as long as you've got an internet connection, you can access the cloud. Now, there could be something simple like Microsoft OneDrive, you know, with their Microsoft 365 services, where you store some of your files and also where you can collaborate and share with other people. As we know, the cloud is growing in popularity. It's been that way for a large number of years. It is expandable because you can go to Google, Apple, Microsoft, etc., and say, "Can I have some more space?" And they go, "Yeah, of course you can. It's only going to cost you an extra £1 a month, £2 a month, and so on." It's cost effective. You don't have any of the maintenance and the upkeep of a NAS drive or a server. Yeah, basically spend a small amount of money every single month on a subscription basis to get access to all that storage. There's no hardware for you to maintain. There's no sort of ongoing stuff that you need to do. It does rely on the internet. That is one of the big downsides to cloud storage. If you have no internet connection, your machine can't connect into the cloud to access everything, which could be quite frustrating at times. It's not the most secure, as I'm sure everybody has heard. There's quite a lot of hacking that goes on with cloud storage, particularly around photos. If you're a well-known public figure or a celebrity, the chances are somebody is going to try and hack you at some point. It's not saying that the rest of us are unimportant, but it has been well known and well documented that the cloud is not necessarily the most secure storage solution out there. So it is great for collaboration because you can invite several people to work on the same document at the same time, which is brilliant. You can share certain files and folders with people externally and internally within your business. So it's great for that sort of thing. And most people don't realize that the cloud actually looks something like this. This is a data center, and the cloud is made up of hundreds, if not thousands, of data centers around the world. And these are racks of servers that store all the data, deal with any incoming and outgoing connections, moving everything around. Cloud storage is very sort of reliable. and has redundancies because your data is generally not all kept in one block in one data center. It's spread across several data centers. So should one of those go down for whatever reason, due to natural disasters or attacks or anything like that, then everything, all your data is safe and still accessible. I believe Google had an issue a number of years ago where they basically turned off one of the data centers to see how bad it would affect people. And I think it was something like 27 minutes for them to resolve the issue. And there was only something like 13% of users actually noticed anything in one particular country. So that's some of the benefits of cloud storage. So that is the end of my presentation. Thank you very much for listening.